Glory be to God, Mighty God Ministries, episode 156, and we're going to call this one, what did I call it? I put God's Power for Job. And this one took me a while to actually do because I've been trying to do it right. And I'll be honest with you, you know, we can try and do things right, and we might not have it right. Because again, like I said, that we can't understand how God does the stuff He does, and I think that's one of the most important things that we can learn is that He is all powerful. He created everything on heaven and earth, and we can't comprehend some of the things He does. Which is why when I compare us, it says the earth is His footstool. We're like little ants, as a comparison. But I'm going to do some comparisons in this one. And I don't know. Again, like some of these I do, they make sense to me, and I can understand them. And other ones like this one, I'm not as sure, but I do want to do it just because I think it's a good thing to do. So let's go ahead and get our thing up. And we had did the one already, um, basically showing that God was telling Job about how do you know how you created the earth and how, how you laid the foundation and all that. But I think this is a really a cool one here, and I'm going to relate this to some worldly things that I think are just cool because if you look at this, the way it describes it, it's describing something that if it actually means it's a real creature, which I believe it is, um, it really does show you the power of God. And again, even when I can do the comparison, personally, I think it's whatever we think in our mind times 500. Times 500. So we're gonna go ahead and just continue this with this one but I thought it's a really good one. And obviously, I hate to compare movies, but I just know a lot of people watch it, and it's you know there's so many things in it that are just not good for you to watch. But I get people watch it, and I know they can relate to it. So, we'll compare this to if you're a Game of Thrones fan. This is gonna make obviously God created everything, so it's nothing in there. But I would say that's a comparison. I would say when we compare this, it is compared to a sea dragon, which is sort of crazy. But when you think about it, that God created everything, He created the sun. It's nothing for Him to create a creature like that. Nothing for it. So we're going to continue. The Lord's challenge continues. Can you catch Leviathan with a hook or put a noose around its jaw? Can you tie it up with a rope through the nose or pierce its jaw with a spike? Will it beg you for mercy or implore you for pity? Will it agree to work for you, to be your slave for life? Can you make it a pet like a bird or give it to your little girls to play with? Will merchants try to buy it, to sell it in their shops? Will its hide be hurt by spears or its head by a harpoon? If you lay a hand on it, you will certainly remember the battle that follows. You won't try that again. No, it is useless to try to capture it. The hunter who attempts it will be knocked down. And since no one dares to disturb it, who then can stand up to me? Who has given me anything that I need to pay back? Everything under heaven is mine. I want to emphasize Leviathan's limbs and its enormous strength and graceful form. Who can strip off its hide and who can penetrate its double layer of armor? Who could pry open its jaws? For its teeth are terrible. The scales on its back are like rows of shield tightly sealed together. They are so close together that no air can get between them. Each scale sticks tight to the next. They interlock and cannot be penetrated. When it sneezes, it flashes light. Its eyes are like the red of dawn. Lightning leaps from its mouth. Flames of fire flash out. Smoke streams from its nostrils like the steam from a pot heated over burning rushes. Its breath would kindle coals, for flames shoot from its mouth. The tremendous strength in Leviathan's neck strikes terror wherever it goes. Its flesh is hard and firm and cannot be penetrated. Its heart is hard as a rock, hard as a millstone. When it rises, the mighty are afraid, gripped by terror. No sword can stop it, no spear, dart, or javelin. Iron is nothing but straw to that creature, and bronze is like rotten wood. Arrows cannot make it flee. Stones shot from a sling are like bits of grass. Clubs are like blades of grass, and it laughs at the swish of javelins. Its belly is covered with scales as sharp as glass. It plows up the ground as it drags through the mud. Leviathan makes the water boil with its commotion. It stirs the depths like a pot of ointment. The water glistens in its wake, making the sea look white. Nothing on earth is its equal. No other creature so fearless. Of all the creatures, it is the proudest. It is the king of beasts. This is a crazy one. And it makes sense because God is all powerful. And it says that some of these different animals that he created, and this is Leviathan. In the chapter before, I might do another one. There's one called Behemoth. And there's some other ones that he created. And he created them for a purpose, but he also created them to show his power. So these are not just your normal things. And when we think of like, if we were to think about like dinosaurs, those are pretty crazy. If we think about dinosaurs, like those are some pretty powerful creations that God created at one time. We don't know why he created them and why he made them extinct. We don't know the reasons behind that. But one of the things that God was showing Job in this was not only the other chapter we did, there's a chapter 40 on Behemoth. In this one is just show his power and the different things he's done and that we can't even comprehend it. And in the next chapter 42, it's basically Job apologizing, and saying, hey, I'm sorry I even spoke up. I know nothing is what that chapter says. But I really like this chapter only because it shows how amazing God's power is and like something that would probably, scare us to death just seeing it, let alone is something that is nothing to him. And what's interesting in this chapter, we're going to break this down, but what's interesting is all the different things that he created. When he talks about them, he's giving us to show us that, one of the reasons why he showed Job these things is to show again that, he loves us, but we're also insignificant when it compares to the whole earth and everything he created in his master plans. And one of the things that it does is show of his massive scale. Again, we put God in this box and he's not. The earth is his footstool. It's his footstool. So we have to understand that we're very small compared to him. He still loves us. He created us for a purpose, just like he created all the other different animals and creations that he created. But we also have to understand that he can create whatever he wants and whatever he pleases. And I'm sure, just like this is an example of different things that he can create. Now, there's all different types of ways you could take this too. Some of the people believe that Leviathan is a evil, chaotic force that causes destruction. And there's also people that believe Leviathan could be Satan. In Revelations, it talks about a beast coming out of the water, coming out of the abyss, with multi-heads, 7 heads or 10 heads, whatever it was, I can't remember. But it talks about it then. But I don't know if they're the same thing. I think they're different, but I'm not sure. There's also some things that come from some Jewish texts. And again, I don't know if these are true or not because I got about 3 pages of notes on this. So it's hard to tell. There's also talks that God actually made a male and female Leviathan, right? And essentially he killed the female because if they procreated, they would probably destroy the entire earth. is the reason behind it. Now, I don't know if that's factual or not, but like I was looking into some other some Jewish texts and some other things. Again, I don't know if this is factual, so take it with a grain of salt. But it was interesting. It sort of does make sense that God may have done that though, because when you think about it, when he created the animals, he created obviously a male and female. to procreate. And the same thing when you think about the animals that were taken on the ark with Noah, right? What did he do? He took a pair, male and female. So it does sort of make sense that's a possibility, but I don't know if that's true. But this is to me, it's like it's crazy, but it's cool. It's cool in the fact that it shows God power, and if He really wanted to create whatever He can, obviously this shows that He could, and obviously something that we would be deathly afraid of. It'd be nothing to Him, and it shows His power that He is in. He's the ultimate creator, and He's in control of everything. No matter what anyone thinks, or no matter what a creature that He created, what they think, He is in control of everything. And it just goes to show you right here. So we're going to move on. So it says, can you catch Leviathan with a hook or put a noose around its jaw? Okay. Can you tie it with a rope to the nose or pierce its jaw with a spike? So that's basically saying, like, obviously us as humans, we have authority. We were given authority on earth for the animals. And there's certain animals like a horse or certain animals that you could put a noose in their mouth, or they get, like it's saying right there, it's referring to, you could put a rope around it and you can control them like a dog. You could domesticate a dog. Obviously, there's some other animals out there that, you wouldn't want to keep them as a pet, but obviously, even in today's standards, we could easily, if you had a weapon of some form, you could probably, take out that animal, you know. So, this is basically saying, like, you can't do it. God's the only one that could do it. It says, will it beg you for mercy and implore you for pity? So it's basically saying, no, this thing's going to destroy you, basically. Will it agree to work for you to be your slave for life? And what's that saying? That's saying that it's, God's the master of it. The Leviathan, no matter what it is, how crazy a creation it is, it's his slave. He's the master of it because he created it. Can you make it a pet like a bird or give it to your little girls to play with? you know, Obviously that's not the case. Will merchants try to buy it to sell it in their shops? Will its hide be hurt by spears or its head by a harpoon? And obviously that's something that's pretty tough, because even a spear or a harpoon, a lot of things, whether it's a fish or a whale or a lot of animals, whether it's on land or sea, with a spear that's sharp or a harpoon, you could kill quite a few. Not all of them, but you could kill quite a few. If you lay a hand on it, you will certainly remember the battle that follows. You won't try that again. Which I'm assuming, the way that's stated, it's basically mean you're going to be dead. You know? No, it is useless to try to capture it. The hunter who attempts it will be knocked down. And since no one dares to disturb it, who then can stand up to me? Again, it's showing his power. Obviously, he created the sun and the moon. So we know, if you just look at those, it goes to show his power. But right here, he's more or less in a very nice manner, again, putting Job in his place. And it's saying, everything under heaven is mine. So it basically means everything on the earth that he created is his. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or what anybody else says. It does not matter. It's all under God's control. And then listen to this. I want to emphasize Leviathan's limbs and its enormous strength and graceful form. So not only is it has limbs, so we know it has limbs. So whether it has 2 legs or 4 legs, we don't know, but it has limbs. Normally, if you have limbs, it's at least 2 or 4. Its enormous strength and graceful form. Who can strip off its hide, and who can penetrate its double layer of armor? So that's saying it's very hard, okay? Because if we look at different animals that are out there right now, there's multiple ones out there. But the conclusion I came to, and again, I don't know if it's biblically sound or not, but the conclusion I came to is it is some type of sea dragon. And the reason why is there's different things you could look at. You could say it's like, and we'll go through it after this, but when you talk about, like, you could say it's like a crocodile, or maybe they meant a crocodile. But again, there's stories of people from a long time ago killing crocodiles. Obviously, you might need a couple people. It'd be hard to do one by yourself, but obviously, that is possible, or with certain guns, you can do that. You know what I mean? who can pry open its jaws, for its teeth are terrible. So again, this is talking about, you know, a creature that we have probably never seen in our lives before. you know, the scales on its back are like rows of shields, tightly sealed together. They are so close together that no air can get between them. Now that's crazy when you think about that. And again, it's just showing that his power, what he can do, because air can penetrate like the smallest of holes. And it's all you have to think about is when all the crazy stuff went down with COVID, and you had the mask, and if you had a 0 point whatever micron mask, there's still little particles that can get in and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of people can relate to that. This is saying that no air can get between them. So this is something that's made totally different than what we've ever seen before. Each scale sticks tight to the next. They interlock and cannot be penetrated. So that, again, it's saying it cannot be penetrated. And then listen to this. When it sneezes, it flashes light. Its eyes are like the red of dawn. If you've ever looked at like the red of dawn, obviously dawn is like, you can say it's 3 different colors. Maybe like sometimes it's like an orangish, like a yellow and a red, and they're mixed together. But it says its eyes are like the red of dawn. So it's saying it has red eyes. And it's saying lightning leaps from its mouth, flames of fire flash out. That right there, that's a dragon. That's what we would believe as some type of water dragon, you know, right there. Smoke streams from its nostrils, and again, that's a dragon. Like steam from a pot heated over burning rushes. Its breath would kindle coals, for flames shoot from its mouth. Again, this is referring to basically some type of sea dragon. The tremendous strength is in Leviathan's neck. Strikes terror wherever it goes, which again, that would make sense, because if it was a dragon, a real life dragon, and God created it, it's probably like a massive one. And yeah, anyone who sees that is going to be deathly terrified. They're going to be terrified. Its flesh is hard and firm and cannot be penetrated. Again, when I read this, there's some thoughts coming to my mind. And I'm going to relate it to a movie, because I used to love watching this series. I used to love watching Godzilla and King Kong. And if we think of, the different animals, it sort of reminds you of some type of like Godzilla. And the reason why I'm saying that is if you watch those types of movies, Godzilla sort of lives in the ocean. He swims around, and when he's needed for whatever animal that's trying to destroy the earth, he'll go and fight that animal and kill it or whatever he needs to do. That's what it sort of reminds me of. Its heart is hard, and the reason why I say that too is because it says the flesh is hard and firm and cannot be penetrated, and that's exactly like his flesh. Okay, obviously it's a movie, but God can do anything he wants. But in the movies, when they try to shoot him with guns or even with rockets or ballistic or nuclear, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even affect him. It's like nothing. Its heart is hard as rock, hard as a millstone. Which again, there's things of like in the past, like a dragon heart. They talk about that. And then a millstone is what used to be used to, make like wheat and certain things that they have to be spun around. So a millstone's like a huge piece of circular concrete almost. And they're super hard because it's made of like it's like a concrete rock. It's interesting how it says this: when it rises, the mighty are afraid, gripped by terror. So when it rises, we don't know if this means it rises out of the water, or does it mean it's like does it mean it's like a water dragon where it can fly up? It doesn't actually specifically say that, but it's interesting how it says that. No sword can stop it, no spear, dart, or javelin. Okay. And obviously, a lot of those weapons, even back in the olden days, those could do some serious damage if they were sharpened. They could do some serious damage. Even today, sometimes if different they're fishing for different things. You know, a lot of times they'll use nets and stuff, or obviously they'll use hooks. But you know, a lot of times they would use, you know, spears or javelins that are connected to a rope, you know, that you shoot. And listen to this: iron is nothing but straw to that creature, and bronze is like rotten wood. So again, this is talking about metal. That these are metals like iron. We build our buildings with those. So like when you see a skyscraper, those are built with, you know, metal iron beams that are held up, and it's saying that those are straw. So that means they're nothing. They're like little pieces of things. This arrows cannot make it flee. Stones shot from a sling are like bits of grass. And think about this. It's saying stones shot from a sling are like bits of grass. Now think about the other stories in the Bible. Think about think about David, right? David killed, you know, it said that he killed a lion and certain animals with his bare hands, and obviously he had a slingshot, so he was able to kill animals very accurate with the sling. And he killed Goliath with the sling. Okay, and Goliath was a giant supposedly, and he killed him with the sling. Now, obviously, he hit him in the head. You know, obviously it was God's power that did that also, but God had trained him. You know, he was a sheep herder, so he was a shepherd. You know, so he'd been out there and he was trained to accurately hit with the sling. But just like this, just goes a perfect example that a sling's like a bit of grass. So that same rock that killed Goliath, through God, of course, because it's channels to glorify God, that would be like a piece of grass compared to this creation, which I believe is a sea dragon. And then listen to this: clubs are like a blade of grass, and it laughs at the swish of javelins. Its belly is covered with scales as sharp as glass. Again, I don't know, but the glass, I don't know if you've ever been cut by glass, it's pretty sharp. So again, it plows up the ground as it drags through the mud. Again, it's got to be some like a dragon, like a sea dragon or something. That's massive. That is massive. And listen to this, because it sounds like it when it describes it. Leviathan makes the water boil with its commotion. So basically, when it's moving in the water, it boils the water, which means it has to have some type of heat source, or it is making so much motion that it makes the water boil. Well, if you ever put like, I'm sure everyone has cooked here before, you know, or maybe you haven't, but if you boil water on the stove, like that takes some extreme heat. Even if you put water in a pan and you know, or a pot, and you put it on the stove, it takes time. Like I do sweet potatoes. In fact, I've done it in a video. So you can see it. It takes time for the water to boil. This is saying Leviathan makes the water boil with its commotion. So basically, whether it's moving, you know, it makes it boil, or whatever it's doing. I don't know whether it's using flames or if it's just able to heat up. It stirs the depths like a pot of ointment. Again, it stirs the depths. So ointment stuff you put on your face normally comes in a container. So if it's a pot, somehow it must do some kind of motion or something. The water glistens in its wake, making the sea look white. Again, what could that be compared to? Well, a boat, obviously, when it talks about the wake, you know, when you're doing it in a boat, you see the water like this, you know. It's saying that it makes the sea look white. So that'd be the entire sea. And then listen to these phrases right here. This is where it gets really crazy. Nothing on earth is its equal. No other creature so fearless. Of all the creatures, it is the proudest. It is the king of beasts. Think about that. Think about this right now. What do we consider, like us humans, the worldly perspective? What's the king of beasts? What do we consider the king of the beasts, the kings of the jungle? That'd be a lion, right? We would say that's a lion, you know? You know, we're taught from a little age, if you watch Lion King or whatever else, what other movies, you know, you're taught that the lion's the king of the jungle, you know? But this is saying right here, nothing on earth is its equal. No other creature so fearless. Of all the creatures, it is the proudest. It is the king of beasts. So when you think about this, again, think of all the animals that are out there that could just destroy you. You know, if you don't have a weapon on you, and even sometimes if you would have a weapon on you, again, you better be praying to God, because if it's like a black bear, a grizzly bear, um, a lion, a hippopotamus, rhinoceros. I mean, you could just go on and on about the different animals out there. And can you subdue them with multiple people or with different tools? Yes, you can. But, again, even those ones, you better start praying. You better start praying to God. If you're by yourself and you have to go up against that type of animal, you better start praying. That's what you want to do. But again, this is saying that this right here is, there's nothing on earth is its equal, you know. Now, there's two different takes again to this, and I've seen different things. And it took me a really long time to come up with this, to do this video, because I was having a hard time with it. The reason why I was having a hard time is because some of the people believe it's just an analogy to show like there's evil, in that, maybe this is referring to like some, evil entities, and that the only one who can really control them is God, which I believe that true. There's no doubt about it that that there's evil in the world, brought by the devil, and the only one that can, you know, defeat them would be God, right? Using his words, the sword of the scripture, which is his words, word of his mouth. And I believe that, but I also believe that this is a real creature that he created. And the reason why I believe it is because the detail that it goes into here is, it's so descriptive. It doesn't make sense to me why you would have all these analogies about something that's not a real creature you created. And it says, again, of all the creatures, it is the proudest. And it's saying that he created these. So, I don't understand, if it is an analogy, like it's so descriptive, like this. I want to emphasize Leviathan's limbs and its enormous strength and graceful form. Like, I don't, to me, if this is an analogy about something else, it doesn't make sense why you would go and talk about like its jaws, its terrible teeth, and how the scales are interlocked together and they can't be penetrated because they're double layered, you know. And you could look at like different animals. Again, you could look at different animals, and you might say like, oh, it's a crocodile, right? But again, um, God through this is showing his power. He's showing his power, that this is something that he created to show his power. And if you're thinking of the God that created the heaven and the earth and the moons and the stars and everything out there, and the animals of land and sea, and it's showing his power, this is going to be something like unbelievable. If it exemplifies his power, it's not going to be like a little lion or a crocodile or like a rhinoceros. It's not going to be any of those. Those would be not. Those are like nothing for him. Those don't show his power. You know, it shows he created them, but it wouldn't show his power. This is going to be something like, that again. There's a reason why he created. We don't know why. Obviously, we can't understand why, but there's a reason why he created it. And obviously, again, it talks about how it's so powerful that there might have been two, and I don't know if that part's biblical or not. I don't know if that's biblically sound or not, but there might have been two, a male and a female, and it talks about how he might have killed the female because if they mated, they would destroy the earth, essentially destroy the ecosystem, which would make sense. Um, and he's basically saying no one can destroy this thing or do anything to it except for God, you know. And there's some interesting chapters too that you can relate to this, and it's crazy because when you start, like I said, I have 3 pages of notes, and I could probably go on probably for 2 hours on this, and I don't want to make this a huge long one because I think the point is that we understand that it shows his power, and if he's going to make a creature that is the biggest creature above everything else, and that shows his power, and that only he can stop it or kill it or whatever he wants to do with it or play with, whatever he's doing with it. Um, it's going to be something like we can't even, again, it's something that we probably can't even comprehend. And whether it's still, I don't know, in the Earth's lava or where it's at, or it's in the deep seas going around, I don't know, but it's obviously, something that is magnificent, that shows God's power, but also would probably scare us to death, more or less. And what's crazy is it actually talks about in the Bible too, about when he parted the Red Seas. There's bits in the Bible that talks about it, that when he parted the Red Sea, he what did it say? I gotta get my notes. It says something about where he basically broke the heads of the sea monster. you know so I don't know if, again, that's related to that, or maybe that, I don't know if that was the female one when that happened, or what that was, but it talks about when he parted the Red Sea, he also, you know he broke the heads of the sea monster. you know and then it also talks about that he, that was fed to the creatures of the desert, or something like that. So it's very interesting. Actually shows up it shows up 6 times. I think it's 6 or 7 times it shows up in the scripture. And when it shows up, there's different things to it. One of them actually also talks about in Revelation, we went over this, that there's a beast that comes out of the sea, or the pit, bottom, so whatever you want to call it, essentially. And that beast had a head that was wounded. We believe that's when it talks about the head that's wounded, it could be Satan, but it also could be this other beast that he brings out, and that, the head is healed. He heals the head. So we don't know what that is for sure, but I pulled this up on one of the AI image creation tools, because I was trying to find something that would like relate, and I actually put in like 10 heads or whatever it was on the thing, and this is what I came up with right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 heads. That's what I came up with right there, because that's sort of the way it was described. It's obviously in the water, and obviously it's blowing fire. Now, I don't know if this is an exact representation. Obviously, I tried to find something that could relate, and I actually have notes that I wrote down on saying, like, its scales are double layered. Its limbs are enormous strength. It's great. It's a graceful creature. Its teeth are terrible. The eyes are, red. Its nostrils, smoke come out of them. Its mouth has flames of fire that flashes lightning as it leaps out of its mouth. It's got multi heads. There's just all these different descriptors in the Bible that breaks it down. But this is sort of what I come up with. It obviously says it's a sea serpent, so we also don't know if it's really long, but it also still has these heads that can come out of the water, but it's super long and enormous that we can't even comprehend how long it is. There's something else that some type of scholar, Jewish scholar or something, said it was like 300 miles long. I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't know, but this is one of the ones that I could come up with. I really wanted to show a couple other ones, but obviously I'd worry about copyright issues. Unless you show, like, I thought about showing the trailer, but the other one that would be relatable, not exactly the same, but if you look at, like, if we look at Godzilla, and again, the channel is glorify God, so whatever he did create, he can destroy it, because if he created it, he can destroy it, because he's all powerful. But again, if we look at Godzilla, it's a perfect example of how basically, they could try to kill it, the army and all the other people can try, the world can try and kill it with whatever they want, and it basically doesn't even affect him. Doesn't affect him at all, because the armor's, it's just like it describes him, it's impenetrable. And he does the same thing. If you ever watch the Godzilla series, he has like an atomic bomb type of power built into him where he can build up his power, and then it goes up and his body actually starts turning blue and then just fired. It's like a bluish fire that comes out of his mouth. The other one that I think relates to, but it had three heads. If you ever seen the series, there's another animal that's a monster. It's a monster actually called the King Ghidorah or the Ghidorah or whatever like that. And it's sort of like this animal right here, except it's three heads. And it's another one that can basically flash out lightning and flames out of its mouth and all kinds of stuff. So I just thought this was a cool one to do, just because again, if you think of, a lion or a cat or a dog, those aren't, those are like puny compared to God's power, when you think about it. And again, he created everything in the earth. The earth is his footstool, you know. So if he was going to create something that shows his power, it's going to be some kind of, you know, massive creature, that is just unbelievable, and it's unfathomable to us. There's also, again, there's another chapter before this one where it talks about how it created the behemoth, and that's some type of like land mammal, that he created also, that's just massive. And we don't know if that animal died out or what happened, because I don't think we've seen it. Some of the people compared it to like a dinosaur, but we don't. There's nothing in the Bible that shows like when the dinosaurs were here that people were here. And there's also no that I know of. There's no like dinosaur fossils that also have human fossils like in the same exact spot at the same time that we know of, as far as I know. So we have to believe that that was before Adam and Eve, and before God created the world, sort of a new creation with grass and with all the different things on the earth and Adam and Eve and that kind of stuff. And we don't know. So there could be other animals out there that went extinct, just like now there's, you see the different things that talk about like, oh, this animal's going extinct and this, all those different things that are happening. But I just thought this was a really cool one. Just because it sounds crazy, but again, if I look at the video I did, I don't know how many times ago, if someone said like, "Yep, there's this thing called a T-Rex, and it's like as bigger than your house, and it's got this tail that's huge and these claws, and it's got teeth that are bigger than a car or whatever, however big a T-Rex's teeth are. I'm sure that I know they're huge. Again, we wouldn't believe it, but we actually have, because we have the fossil bones dug up, we can see the whole structure of the animal. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't believe it, And it also would make sense that there's these things out there, because there's certain, whether it's stories or legends or myth, whatever you want to call them, there's different things out there, and although some things that are legends are myths or they're made up, you have to believe some of it's true. And some of it you can find in the Bible based off of that. Some of it's not in there. Obviously everything's not in there, but it talks about this. It talks about it blows out fire. So it's, to me that's a dragon. And like I said, there's a lot of people that took a different take on this, and they took it as it's some type of, it's an analogy talking about an evil chaotic thing, or different things like that. um, and part of me thought that was possible, but it's just, I don't think it is, because it's too descriptive. It's too descriptive. It's just too descriptive to me to make it think it's an analogy. It's just too descriptive. And the other thing, I want to be honest with you, is I sort of like reached out and sort of asked God in prayer, and I believe I got the correct answer. At least I believe I got the correct answer, that I believe he showed me that it's an actual real thing. because it took me probably 4 days. It may have been longer than that, maybe 4 to 5 days. I've been wanting to do this video, but I do not want to do it without like, um, I guess being accurate. And even though I know like I'm gonna fail, you know, I wanted to be accurate on it. And I sort of reached out, and God showed me this funny way He does things, or at least to me. I don't know. It cracks me up every time I see it. And you know, I believe that's the case. But I think it's cool. I think it's cool that He created, you know, these these animals that we probably never seen, at least not, or like, other than like maybe trying to relate it to a movie or something. We've never seen them. But again, we don't even know what's all out there, you know, because you have like even under Antarctica and just all the different places, you know, the sea goes down so deep that we don't even know what all's down there, you know, and we don't, you know, it's crazy, but it's cool. It's cool to think that, you know, we serve a God that is so powerful that He created like a sea dragon, you know, which would make sense, you know, just to show His power. And it's probably so massive, again, we can't even comprehend it, you know. So the most important thing, other than again the channel to glorify God, is making sure you're saved. I'm sure if you watch this long that you probably are saved, but if not, get your golden ticket to heaven right here. It is one of the most important things you can do. Your salvation is so important because again, when you die, there's one of two things are going to happen. You're either going to go to heaven, wrong hand, heaven, if you're saved and you believe, or the other place you're going to go to is hell, unfortunately. Again, whether you believe it or not, hell is basically life without God, which means all the goodness, the love, the joy, and happiness, it's taken away. So if you can imagine that type of place, it's just going to be darkness. Because what's God? God is Jesus. They're love, Love, and they're light. So you're going to be in darkness, you know, and you do not want to be there. You do not want to be there. So again, is all you have to do is read this prayer out loud and basically believe that God, who's all powerful, that created the earth, the stars, the moon, the sun, every person, the animals, the land and sea, the vegetation, everything else in the world, He created it all. And basically He knew we were going to fall short of His standard, which is too high. He's too good for all of us. So He knew we would not make it, you know. So basically He needed a way. He made a way for us to be forgiven of all the sins or the bad things that we've ever done in our lives. Um, and that's how that works. Basically, you have to believe that He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, down to earth to live a sinless life. He died on the cross, rose 3 days later to take the keys from hell so that anyone who believes in Him may be purified with His body and blood, and our sins and evil things that we've done in our lives will be washed away and forgiven. That's all you have to believe. And that's what you're doing by believing this. You have to have faith in the mustard seed, which is like this small, very small. You just have to believe it. So that simple thing, you just say, Lord Jesus, I repent of my sins and surrender my life. Wash me clean. I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that He died on the cross for my sins and rose again on the third day for my victory. I believe that in my heart, and I make confession with my mouth that Jesus is my Savior and Lord. And it is that simple. You do that, and you are saved. And I believe, again, you know, God's going to start working in your life. Things may get a little bit worse at first, but and then eventually they'll get better. But no matter what trials and tribulations or problems you go through in life, you're going to have Jesus Christ as your rock, your firm foundation to stand on. And because you are built on the rock, your foundation will never falter. You will always have Him. He'll always be with you, never forsake you, never leave you. And it's the best thing you can ever do in your life, I promise you. So God bless you, and we'll see you in the next one.